Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of the Vedic Lunar Scope for the lunar eclipse that's going to take place in Rohini Nakshatra on the 30th of November 2020. Before we get into talking about this particular eclipse cycle, just to remind you that eclipse consultations and other consultations are available through my astrological services page, where I generally run regular special offers, and you can find information on that at the link that you'll see above. And while you're there, please make sure to take a look for the new Pulse Parlor, which is my brand new social media platform, which is available at pulseoftheuniverse.com. So great, let's get into things and let's talk about this particular eclipse cycle. So something that's a little known fact that people are confused about, because I often encounter people saying to me, oh goodness, we're having eclipses again. And eclipses are quite common occurrences. There's generally two sets a year, right? And you'll generally have a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse in close proximity to each other, because one of those, the lunar eclipse, takes place on the full moon, and the solar eclipse takes place on the new moon. And occasionally you have an extra one kind of thrown in there for extra measure. So they're quite common. They happen regularly. And really what they relate to is a shift, right? And it's a shift that kind of sets the tone for the next 6 months that we're dealing with in one area of our life or another. So let's talk about this particular eclipse cycle, which is going to have a tone of the concepts of growth and decay. Now, somewhere in one area of your life or another, you're likely feeling that one thing is very quickly declining and decaying, whilst another thing that you're striving to grow doesn't seem to be coming together, perhaps in the manner that you were hoping for it to, and perhaps as quickly as you would like for it to. We need to remind ourselves, though, about this concept of creation, because, like any creator, we take pride in our creations, right? We become very personally attached to those things. But we forget that really nothing in our lives is created unless we're being created through. Okay. And even if you recognize yourself as a steward for whatever it is that you're trying to grow in your life, which is perhaps a better way to associate with it, of course you want to find yourself in a position of being able to do a good job. And so in one area of your life or another, you're beginning to feel that something that you're striving to manifest, a vision that you've had in mind, it's beginning to, well, come under threat. It's perhaps not coming together as quickly as you need for it to, whilst, as I mentioned, something else in another area of your life is beginning to rapidly decline. And that's something that doesn't feel comfortable for you, because on one level, you're relying on the resources from something that's rapidly declining to build up the thing that you're striving to more rapidly grow. And that makes it very difficult for you to keep your mind focused in the way that you really should at this particular moment in time. And so, whereas ordinarily, if you were in a position of being able to practice, well, for lack of a better way to put it, relaxed thinking, you wouldn't find yourself in quite as much of a dichotomy as you're likely finding yourself at this particular moment in time. And that dichotomy, because, well, you've got a sense of seriousness attached to the result that you're striving to manifest. This is big stuff for you. And perhaps because it's big stuff for you, you're getting a little too deeply involved with the situation. And all that's really happening, because of this overwhelming sense of necessity and also this overwhelming sense of responsibility, What's happening is it's just becoming too much for you to handle. And rather than just being able to think simply and clearly and come up with good, positive answers, instead, you're perceiving a threat and it's causing you to, well, kind of go, well, how am I going to keep this going forward? How am I going to keep other things in my life protected if this project doesn't begin to manifest? And so, with this sense of seriousness that's there, you're feeling kind of torn in regards to which direction that you need to go in. But perhaps there's not as big of a threat as you think that there is. Perhaps instead, what's taking place is a transformation. Perhaps that transformation that's taking place is serving you in a manner that really is better for you than you might ultimately be able to imagine. Maybe, even though you don't feel like you can, maybe you need to just relax a little bit more, right? Maybe you need to take your time, even though you don't feel like you can take your time. Maybe you need to approach this situation, even, and yes, I'm going to suggest it, with a degree of a sense of humor. Now, you may feel like, I can't do that. This is too important. This is too serious to laugh at it. Well, that would be, kind of like insincere, or perhaps not recognizing the importance of this sacrifice. But precisely the reason that you need to do this is because you care so much. You can't see the answer clearly right now because your mind is bogged down in the confusion of attachment. And you're finding yourself in a space where ultimately you're feeling like, well, gee, I really have to kind of go at this alone. And because I have to go at it alone, I'm going to have to assert myself even more strongly than I've been asserting myself. And you begin to look for quick solutions and quick answers that you think are going to boost the situation. But the concept here is you start looking for quick solutions and quick answers rather than allowing those quick solutions and allowing those quick answers to come to you. And why? I'm going to say it again, because you're finding yourself in a position where you're not able to allow yourself to relax. It's okay. The thing that's falling apart in your life, you may think that you really need for that to stay as it is, but you don't. As a matter of fact, ultimately, you need for it to fall apart. If it stayed in place, even if it stayed in place whilst you were building this new phase of your life, it would end up getting in the way, right? So practice a degree of trust. Understand that one of the best things that you can do in this particular situation is to remember the concept of devotion. Remember the concept of sacrifice. Remember the concept of caring, which is precisely why you started down this path in the first place. But somewhere along the way, you've gotten lost, you've become confused, you've allowed yourself to forget the intent behind your actions. And you need to bring yourself right back to that centered space. Focus on that sense of devotion, right? Apply yourself to the task ahead and focus less on all the different deviations from your path that are pulling you in all these different directions, about 35 or 40. Don't ask me how I came up with that number. It's just a randomly generated number. About 35 or 40 different directions all at once. Of course, you're not going to be able to focus. And those things that are pulling you here and there, those are related to the perceived threats that you're feeling. Focus instead on the simplicity of what you're trying to bring into manifestation and the reason that you're trying to manifest it. Miraculously, through doing so, you're going to find yourself in a position where everything just begins to fall in line much more miraculously than you could have imagined that it would do so. And if you could use a little bit of help getting a little bit of clear perspective on this particular situation, whatever that situation might be, I will remind you that I do offer several different levels of astrological service, all of which are again available through my astrological services page, which you will find linked above. That's going to do it for this look at the lunar eclipse in Rohini Nakshatra, which takes place on the 30th of November, 2020. And keep your eyes peeled after the lunar eclipse for the solar eclipse video. And until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.